Channel's Week in Review. A potential major shift in the peace process is signaled by the Netanyahu and Obama administrations. Federation leaders from around the country descend on Washington, find out how these disparate communities are faring, and more of the Jewish news that's changing your world in this webcast version of the Week in Review. Hello, and welcome to the Jewish Channel's Week in Review. I'm Stephen I. Weiss. The Netanyahu and Obama administrations revealed in speeches this week that they might be heading in a different direction regarding the Israeli-Palestinian peace process. The Obama administration has been calling for months for Israel to freeze settlement growth, but Chief of Staff Rahm Emanuel proposed that peace negotiations should proceed without preconditions in a speech to American Jewish leaders on Tuesday. This comes soon after Secretary of State Hillary Clinton indicated during her recent Middle East trip that negotiations might proceed even if Israel doesn't freeze settlement construction. The Chief of Staff's comments came during what is likely the largest annual gathering of American Jewish leaders, the Federation System's General Assembly, or GA. Emanuel spoke a day after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the same crowd, where Netanyahu also called for negotiations without preconditions. TJC's Christian Neen reports on the major policy statements at the GA and response from community officials.
In remarks before the Jewish Federation's General Assembly, White House Chief of Staff Rahm Emanuel addressed the administration's view of both Israel's place in the Middle East and its role in the peace process.
As this administration has sought to engage the region and open up dialogue with Israel's neighbors and with Muslim nations around the world, there are some who suggest that this implies a diminished level of support for Israel, or would come at Israel's expense. That is not the intent, and that is not the case, and never will be. The truth is just the opposite, for it is only through dialogue that we can achieve lasting peace that Israel seeks.
One issue that has repeatedly stood in the way of that dialogue is the future of Jewish settlements in the West Bank.
Now, I know that some in the Jewish community believe we have singled out Israel for criticism as it relates to settlements. But the fact is, the administration's position is consistent with the position of previous administrations and with the previous commitments of the Israeli government under the roadmap.
But Emanuel nonetheless indicated that freezing settlement growth shouldn't be a precondition for negotiations, and also expressed some of the Obama administration's expectations from Palestinian leadership.
No one should allow the issue of settlements to distract from the overarching goal of a lasting peace between Israel, Palestinians, and the Arab world.
To see what Netanyahu had to say and what American Jewish leaders thought, tune into the full broadcast version of the Week in Review.
Thank you, Christian. We'll have more from the GA in a moment, but first, some somber news from Jewish communities around the globe. There was an outbreak of vandalization of synagogues and other Jewish buildings in the past week. In America, a synagogue in Sacramento, California was spray-painted with racist messages, including a swastika and SS lightning bolts. Two buildings in Florida were similarly vandalized. A Jewish community center in Coral Springs, Florida was vandalized, including with a message containing a swastika and containing the words, "Your worst nightmare." In Miami, Florida, gunshots were fired at a Jewish school, shattering glass doors but failing to injure any of the students inside. Even in Israel, a couple of young vandals were caught breaking into a synagogue in the city of Ashkelon. And for a fifth incident in the past week, the synagogue in Dresden, Germany was also painted with swastikas. All these incidents come near the 71st anniversary of Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass, considered a major turning point in German anti-Semitism in 1938. Turning back to the General Assembly, at this gathering of community officials, we had a unique opportunity to get a status report on communities from across the entire country. With a tough recession that's been declared over by government officials, are things doing better for local Jewish communities? Rebecca Honig-Friedman reports.
With representatives from many of the 400 local Jewish federations of North America, the General Assembly is a chance to take stock of the state of the American Jewish community. We asked representatives from communities throughout the U.S. about the challenges facing their populations.
To engage young adults, to have a clear vision of what it means to have a Jewish life in our city, and to focus on the future.
While these goals are generally common to federations across the country, each community's history and culture provides its own set of challenges. Austin, Texas, for example, is particularly well-suited to innovation.
Jewish population has quadrupled over the last 20 years, and it's one of the youngest Jewish communities in the country, reflecting Austin in terms of that. So yeah, so we're in a unique situation And you know, but the challenges, of course, are you know, being a community where there aren't deep roots, having to connect to you know, to younger generations, and you can't necessarily do it in, you know, in the ways that have been traditionally been done. And thankfully, Austin is the kind of place where we're able to innovate and make change, because that it doesn't have those deep roots and deep history. So we're building new institutions and new ways of working.
While a lack of deep roots can be challenging, too much history can also be difficult to handle.
Rhode Island is an old Yankee community, so it's a population that is relatively static. We had 19,000 Jews in the 1960s. We have 18,500 Jews in this decade. So it's managing change and making progress, recognizing a new environment for activism while really not having population growth.
To hear more from Jewish communities across the country and what they're taking away from the GA, see the full broadcast version of the Week in Review.
Thank you, Rebecca. Finally, a pair of unusual items from this week. Yiddish aphorisms aren't what you expect to hear from the mouths of Catholic elected officials, but that's exactly what was heard from Nassau County Executive Thomas Suozzi. The leader of the Long Island County's electorate used the phrase Mensch tracht, Gott lacht, or man plans, God laughs, to refer to his own plans put on hold with a tighter than expected outcome in his election. He was quoted saying this in the New York Times. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe never attended a basketball game, but fans of the game in Israel will be greeted with sayings from the late rabbi and scoreboard messages for a professional team in Jerusalem. It's part of a reported advertising partnership between Chabad Lubavitch Hasidim and the Hapoel Yerushalayim basketball team. In one game already, attendees were greeted with messages like, "Your one good deed does good for everyone," and "You want to change the world? The power is in your hands." It remains to be seen whether the basketball players will find that the late rabbi's messages will increase the power in their hands. That's all for this week. For more news and analysis from the Jewish Channel during the week, please check out our blog at newsdesk.tjctv.com. For the full broadcast version of the Week in Review, including additional stories, interviews, and features, please stop by the Jewish Channel on cable. From all of us here at the Jewish Channel, be well. The Jewish Channel is available on cable: IO Optimum Cable Channel 291, Time Warner Cable Channel 528, RCN Channel 268, Verizon Fios Channel 900, and Cox Cable Channel 1. For more information, visit tjctv.com.